If during the age of dinosaurs all animals were gigantic because of the high oxygen levels, then just imagine how humans would look if oxygen levels were artificially increased today. Dr. Carl Bohr and his team conducted an experiment where they essentially recreated such a world under a dome. In this terrarium, they placed several types of animals and fish, and most importantly, the oxygen level in the air was set to match what it was during the Mesozoic and Jurassic periods. And here's where it gets really interesting. This is what the fish looked like at the beginning of the experiment, and this is how they looked at the end. According to the data in his reports, these fish grew to be 3 times larger than regular adult specimens. Once the doctor realized everything was working, I think you can guess on whom he wanted to run the next experiment. Of course, no one would ever allow a human to be placed in the terrarium, so the experiment was postponed. But in 1922, something unusual happened. A boy named Robert Wadlow suddenly began to grow rapidly. By the time he turned 18, his height reached about 8 feet 6 inches, and he weighed around 440 pounds. Just so you understand, here's how he looked compared to regular people. But the scariest part isn't why he grew so tall. It's the fact that a human like this can barely survive in the conditions of our world today. Maybe in ancient times this would have been possible, but now, if everyone grew to be around 9 feet 10 inches tall, our hearts simply couldn't handle it. It wouldn't be able to pump enough blood for such a massive body. And our knee joints would simply burst under the enormous pressure. So now you can answer for yourself. Are you sure that the experiment was really postponed? Why was the very first creepypasta ever created? How can a single creepy image make you remember a piece of information forever? And more importantly, who is the person behind the creation of creepypasta? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. I'll be showing you several photos of different houses. Try to remember just one of them. At the end of the video, you'll understand why. When we hear the word creepypasta today, we imagine things like Skibidi Toilet, The Backrooms, Slenderman, and of course, Siren Head. But you need to understand that all of these are just derivatives of something that appeared way earlier. You've probably seen this picture many times. The story behind it is that, if you follow all the instructions, a boy named Jeff the Killer will come to your house. If you feel intense fear and hear loud footsteps, then supposedly it worked. I'll put it this way, that story is both a lie and the truth at the same time. It actually began back in 1888 in London, when a real serial killer was active. They called him Jack the Ripper, but no one ever saw his face. He existed only as rumors and whispers. Then one person named Cesar combined all those rumors into a single video. This video has since been deleted from open access and can now only be found on a few hidden websites. In it, this mysterious user told a story that Jack the Ripper deliberately poured acid on his face so no one could ever identify him. And you know what? It even sounds somewhat believable. It makes sense. He simply didn't want to end up in prison. Cesar basically created the blueprint for creepypasta. The story started to spread like wildfire across the entire internet. People realized you don't have to invent a story from scratch. You can just take real facts and season them with a bit of mystery. But as you've probably noticed, in our time, we've gone so far that now the entire story is made up of nothing but that mystery source. Cesar was just the first to come up with the formula. But the more important question is, who is the one creating this mystery source today? Here's a small hint. It's not even a human. Take a look at this famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper. It depicts the very moment when Jesus said he knew who would betray him. There are countless hidden details in this painting. For example, if you count all the hands, you'll find there's an extra pair. Even centuries after the painting was completed, no one knows who those hands belong to. What's even creepier, that Da Vinci worked on this painting for 3 years. Imagine how much he could have hidden in it during that time. Recently, an Italian composer proposed that Da Vinci might have hidden an entire melody in the painting. He placed musical notes on the positions of the hands and the bread, then tried to play the melody. At first, it sounded like nothing special, no harmony at all. But here's the twist. Leonardo da Vinci wrote all his notes in his diaries from right to left. So, the composer reversed the melody and played it backwards. And suddenly, it sounded perfect. Many music critics admitted it was a complete, structured melody. That means the notes weren't random. This melody is said to reflect the coming suffering of Jesus, but what if everything I just told you is a complete fabrication? It could be, but that doesn't matter much, because you'll still remember it. The real question is, who or what makes you remember it so clearly? This someone is much closer to you than I am. If you haven't guessed yet, I'll explain. Imagine you're sitting in a class or lecture. Someone is simply talking about a scientific fact, or 5 minutes into the lecture, they suddenly flash a creepy image or a loud jump scare. Which one would you remember better? Yeah, same as me, the second one. Professor Librovsky once wondered why. He was giving history lectures and noticed students constantly yawning, not taking notes, sometimes even sleeping. So he ran an experiment. He split students into 2 groups. To one, he gave regular lectures. To the other, at the end of each story about a famous commander, he showed uncensored death photos or told some disturbing, completely fake story. Within a month, he noticed that students in the second group skipped fewer classes, stayed focused the entire time, and took notes non-stop. In other words, every day he gave them just a tiny dose of creepypasta. While they were listening to the creepy story, they were also absorbing the rest of the lecture, without even realizing it. This technique became known as the Overton window. So ask yourself, can you be sure this technique wasn't used on you? Creepypasta has always existed. Remember how you learned about the mysterious death of writer Nikolai Gogol, who was terrified of being buried alive. And then, supposedly, someone found scratches inside his coffin. Or the story of Prince Oleg, whose death was foretold by his horse, and after the horse died, a snake crawled from its skull and bit him, causing his death. There's no solid evidence for these stories, but I'm sure you've heard them in school. And was that a bad thing? Not really. After all, how else do you capture a distracted mind? The real issue is that our attention tends to lock onto things that scare us. Now, focus and remember those 4 houses I mentioned earlier. I'm going to guess you remembered this one. Maybe some of you remembered this other one. But almost no one paid attention to the last 2. You might say, well, that's because they looked ordinary, but the second house was actually Escher's house with endless staircases, and the third was an upside-down house. They weren't mysterious, so they didn't trigger any emotion, and your brain simply didn't bother remembering them. This proves something simple: scary or emotionally charged images are much easier to remember than anything else. Why does your brain prefer this over something neutral? Because the brain craves emotion. And when there's no emotion, it may even create one itself. Remember when I told you about the tallest man in history? That's a fact, a real person. And then about the doctor's experiment with oxygen and fish, another fact. But when I placed those two facts side by side, your brain automatically added a bit of mystery. You probably imagined that the doctor grew the tall man in his terrarium. But I never said that, not once. If you don't believe me, rewind and check. And that's the real secret. All scary stories, legends, and creepypastas are created by us, or more precisely, by our brains. It's like a giant game of broken telephone. You tell a scary story to your friend, they tell theirs to someone else, and each person unconsciously adds something new to fill that emotion again. The only real question is, will you keep these imagined details locked inside your head, or will you share them with the world? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow.